Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Having grown up with personalized products and dependable technology, China's Generation Z is now a major influencing factor for marketing in China. So what makes them so special? And how do these young people shape the future of shopping? And how can brands effectively attract them? As Gen Z becomes the new sought-after favorite of Chinese brands, designs, and culture, are we seeing the dawn of a new made-in-China renaissance? To help us get a deeper understanding of this new generation of their growing consumer power, I'm joined by Xing Zhiming, President of Task Force Consultancy, Duan Yanling, founder of Davos blog base, and Andy Mok, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Who is Generation Z, and how do you define, what are the characteristics of this generation? Let me start with Zhiming.
Great to be here with you for the show. And it's very, very interesting that every generation requires a definition. And definitely within the Chinese market, Generation Z has a very different definition. As we said, that they are a generation of young people that was born after 1995 and before 2009. So this kind of a group of people that passing through 15 years, they are exerting very strong influence to the consumable markets. And we are defining this Generation Z people as very, they are very self-conscious, they are still exploring themselves, and they have an identity. So for consumable goods and for consumer brands, actually, working with them and trying to be friends with them is their top priority. And that is what we've been seeing from the market, and all the agencies are suggesting their clients to do so.
Mm-hmm. Well, Yanling, I want to bring you in. If you look at from your own perspective, how do you, differentiate this generation, Generation Z, from previous generations, like the millenniums, or those who were born in the 1980s, 70s, or 60s, for example?
I think we would even identify from ourselves as Generation X, right? The XYZ, the Y is Millennium Z. Make me think of it seems like end of a cycle. It's like I would suggest we identify this group, the generation born in this total digital age. That's our second generation actually now, to be honest. And this is a generation that truly take the both disadvantage and advantage to live in this multi-universe, right? Digital dimensions that make them have so much knowledge in a way, as I experienced with the daughters and sons, and they were born sort of after 96, as I understood. But at the same time, they're so living in a fragmented reality that they have no Madonna or Michael Jackson as a common idols to relate to. They all have their memes, they have their little world, they're very, very fragmented. So that's a disadvantage I see from their emotional development and social development perspective. But definitely I see it's a generation, the new coming, and it's exciting to see them. And I'd love to see them beyond being a target audience of a market.
Interesting observation. Andy, you are from the US, but you are based in China. How do you compare, Generation Z, say, in China or in the US or in the European nations?
Well, I think that's a great question, Qinduo. I think, first of all, let me talk about the similarities. I think that around the world, this generation is, of course, not only born digital, but mobile digital. So grown up in a world where always connected everywhere. I think that's a very important similarity. One of the differences I think we can see in Gen Z in China is that they've grown up not only in historically unprecedented prosperity for China, but I would say relative prosperity as well. So we look around the world, certainly in the advanced economies like the US, of course, a very high level of material well-being, but also I think a lot of challenges as well. However, I think the young people in China today, this Generation Z, is also growing up with a sense of confidence and hope for the future. They've seen how well China has done. So I think that the big difference is a sense of hopefulness about the future, as well as, I think, a sense of great possibility as well.
Interesting here. If you look at this Generation Z in the Chinese environment, Zemian, they represent like 260 million people, about 70% of the Chinese population of 1.4 billion. If you compare this percentage, 15% of the population, but in terms of their expenditure on the new brands, that's about 25%. So I guess, if you look at it from the market point of view, it is, important a group of people in terms of businesses.
Of course, they are buying more and they are using more channels to purchase more because, as we said, that this is a very large consumer group and they are growing. As we said, at the first few, there actually was born after 1995, so it means that in a upcoming 5 to 10 years, most of these Generation Z people will be graduating from college and they will start take jobs and they will spend more on that. And I echo on Andy on the current situation is basically, they are well educated, but sometimes they feel that they are feeling certain pressure. So sometimes, facing the high rising of the property market, real estate market, they tend to not own any property, so they don't necessarily need to pay loans. So instead, they wanted to leave the moment and want to spend the money they earn. So we can see that there is a big trend that more young people are taking a very different approach when they wanted to buy something that they enjoy and like. The brands that can represent who they are and can get them involved in their separate, very fragmented communities, small communities or cultural groups that they can feel very relaxed and easy within. So we definitely see that these new consumable brands, not only the international brands, but also domestic brands, do see a great potential if they tap into this market, it means a great market success in the coming decades.
They basically live on social media and they rely on social media to reach out for their entertainment, for inspiration, for example. So what, from your observation, what does a certain brand mean to this group of people? Are they purchasing a certain products based on the brands or based on more like a self-expression? Somehow these products simply meet their needs or something that touches them, internally.
First, I just feel lots of comfort in the past 20 years when we started, like 10 years ago, we started like a 大石烂 Lao Zihao revival, bring in design and even innovations into the old streets. That this much younger generation got the message, get the seeding message. And then I just want to say that each generation is just continuation, and we are aware how we were when teenager and 20s. So there's a common needs that always need to be met, right? Be recognized, be connected, to be accepted as certain tribal groups, and to feel sense of belonging. And that's why brands has always play at that kind of role. And it just, in this Generation Z, what I truly found comforting is the revival of traditional culture in a very contemporary context. And there's a confidence, hopefully not overrise to extreme, but definitely this revival of self-confidence and cultural identity. I rather say that than national identity. And they're also a way of, by social media in nature, it is word of mouth using digital tools. So the idea of having experiential connections and having this experience as a product, a service, is much more promising, I would say, in this domestic recycling, our upgrading economy in China, and that's following the trend of Generation X have been paved the way, and Y have been major consumer of this today, in terms of 相见, 相诉, all this new way of looking at life and consume while also enjoy. And I think that will be much stronger and sophisticated as time being, but they are teenagers and 20s, so we know that how to go. And you can entice their consumption. You can do that through all way of manipulation, but you also can do the long how, which win their heart. Like certain brands has to becoming a real real like a flagship of ideals and life, and that will lead long haul. So I always see China's going a long haul of responsibility, sustainability, and consumption and service and product should also look at that as well. So I would see even consumption brands can be educational. Why not? So yeah, that's what I would like to see at that hopeful side of it.
Well, the revival of the Chinese culture in the Chinese brands is one of the important parts we are going to touch upon. Before that, I want to spend a few more minutes on this, living on social media, to explore more about one of the platforms that has outsized the, I would say, influence on those Generation Z people. BillyBilly, this is a Chinese video platform, probably for people who are outside China not familiar with this website, but it's very popular with this particular group of people. What about this website? Tell us how special it is.
I mean, if we are defining that being innovative in a video platform arena, I think BillyBilly definitely has a story to tell. It has become successfully not only on the financial market, but also winning over the minds of young generation. As I just look at the figures, I think in about 2 months ago, they have released the latest figure that there are 65 million active users on a daily basis on this website. And that requires the efforts of all these kind of, they call it upju, or the people who upload their videos. So there are a lot of content generation on a daily basis featuring thousands of categories of cultural and trendy and even current affairs. There are a lot of debates on that, a lot of education and information sharing and discussion. And what's most important about BillyBilly, it creates arena for people to make friends and comment and find who they are in a smaller community. For example, there is one feature called 弹幕, or we call it real-time comment. While you are watching videos, and there will always be those 弹幕 or real-time comments that that this is part of the interaction with that. So on that, we understand that there are so many content providers on this platform and attract even more a larger group of audiences focusing on that, getting information and be fun, be happy here. And that means that a lot of traffic for the consumable goods. So I do see more brands, whether or not they are international brands or domestic brands, are spending more money, more of their budget, not only supporting the key opinion leaders and bloggers and vloggers on this platform, and they are, telling a story, a more comprehensive story about their brands, and then eventually it will turn out to be a successful profits and rising revenues for them.
So is that the way, the video bloggers on the BillyBilly, that's the why they upload certain kinds of or type of videos to influence, their followers? Is that the way you see the desires, the preferences of the Generation Z?
I mean, it's becoming very interesting that we see that BillyBilly creates an ecosystem for brands, for video uploaders, and also for this platform to survive and even to thrive. So in my opinion, it's not only that they are motivated because of the financial interest that they can get from the brands. It's more like an ecosystem. When good contents are recognized by the audience, there will be more traffic, there will be more people paying attention to these contents, and naturally advertisers and brands will spend more money on these people. So I think the fine balance for BillyBilly is to find a great balance about content generation and pure advertising, is how to make contents more fun. It's more like what we are doing on a daily basis. So it's no longer a platform for advertisers. Everybody is trying to find a creative, a very very interesting way and innovative way to interact with their target consumer through these KOLs, through this upju. And I think this is becoming something that the rest of the world might be interested in looking into. And I do see that TikTok, the international version of Douyin, is also doing the same thing by having more people creating more positive contents, and content generation really is the key for these platforms to move on with their financial story and commercial story.
Well, Andy, if you look at this generation, they are also called basically the digital natives. In what way, the tech innovation or the cultural elements somehow, influence or help form their opinions in terms of, their consumption habit or spending habit, for example?
Well, I think the most important thing for this generation being digital natives is that they really aren't familiar with any other way of communicating. So if you think back to earlier generations, people had to get used to the idea of email, the internet, other types of digital communication. And of course, a number of people are still uncomfortable with that. Whereas if you grew up with something, it feels it's second nature. So I think that's very important. But the other part too I want to add about BillyBilly and Douyin and TikTok is that they're really important Chinese innovations in that it's not just about eyeballs, but it's about engagement. And we think about what do brands, advertisers really care about? A great brand has an emotional connection with its target audience or target customers. And what is that emotional connection? Another word for that is engagement. So we think about BillyBilly and TikTok through different means, but have achieved this really high level of engagement. And I think this is why it is so compelling for brands to be on these platforms. And it's not pure advertising, because when we look at what really makes a KOL successful, he or she has to fulfill a need, whether it's people looking for the best makeup or the best places to study or the best new gadget. People want advice, they want help. One thing that I've heard from people in Generation Z, I teach a class at Tsinghua, and so I've had the opportunity to interact with many Gen Zers, is that they feel very fortunate because they have so many choices, a lot of disposable income, much more so than earlier generations in China. But they also feel a certain paralysis because there's too many choices. And we look at BillyBilly, we look at TikTok, these KOLs help guide them through this thicket of paralyzing choice. So it actually is win-win in that from that perspective.
Interesting, too many choices can be a good thing. Also, a headache somehow. Yanling, if you look at this spending habit of this, young group of people, there's a Chinese word phrase being called like 月光族, basically moonlight, clan. They call themselves. Basically, you spend up all you earn each month, your monthly salary. Live paycheck by paycheck. But this is obviously against this traditional Chinese cultural practice. People tend to save more and spend in a very cautious way, I would say. What are the reasons, what are the factors that are leading to the changes of this young generation?
I always say we are enter age from studying social science to life science, right? So it's just a matter of look at life in general, and I realize why it's great to be middle age, because balance and harmony is the best we can get. So 月光族, I would say they are the rebels from our older generation who truly has invested too much for everything else than themselves, and that will create a certain, inner hunger and inner necessity to put all their hope, wish, pressure to their next generation. This is a very vicious chain of this unsatisfied, unfulfilled life, right? And then this younger generation have everything they can ever think of and too much choices, and there's zero patience, there's zero needs that at least material needs, they become a very little bit we call empty life. So 月光族 in a way is we know why we do shopping, right? Like a retail therapy. So in a way that it's a dilemma between the balance, right? How we can balance that, really take care of yourself and your needs, but don't be driven by fear, need, and desire. So there I keep a very cautious view on the new market, because the new market will look at platform and individual much more as a trend globally. And I think Chinese, the Generation Y, are living in a very, very fortunate time, full of hope. But the global trend, as a social media doesn't have national boundary, and they will coming at this one of significant messages. What do we really want, and what can money buy, and money cannot buy? And I think the 月光族 are buying things until the point they're gonna 躺平, right? This 躺平 become a really key word. It's also a very alarming signal, seeing what brands or service or experiences can be created to really balance that needs, that's hunger for something else or balance for balance. I think that would be a very long ago. I give you an example. One of our social entrepreneurs started doing volunteering business for the sacred sites around the Tibet, Qinghai, Mongolia. It became a very trendy with very small agile groups. Why not doing that? So I always say make money and meaning will be wonderful for the Generation Y trend. And some business will figure out early will be playing long haul. And that's what I really hope for. And I see that will come in China for sure.
Well, Yanling, you mentioned a new concept actually in the Chinese, for this young generation, basically laying flat. In terms of consumption, you're talking about meeting your needs, your desires, your preferences. When talk about laying flat, basically, when you are facing the pressure, you say, leave it there, let me alone. So is this a new kind of balance somehow they need to strike?
I think that's the overwhelm, right? When we're from our higher mind and lower mind. When our lower mind get attacked, our impulse is to really overwhelm and freeze and lie down tamping. It's almost that way. But I also see lots of incredible, I would say, developed beings and youngsters. They just don't want to participate in the treadmill game, and then they want to find other way. They also have a sustainable lifestyle and make money and make a living, but does create a very 小众品牌, right? Created this niche brands, niche lifestyles, and multiple fragmented, but unified in the idea that we don't want to buy into the story by the brands, but we want to support the brands that have the spirit that we can resonate with. And that's another way of a tamping. They're mocking themselves as tamping, but there's a very different nature in these two styles. But once give up, the others really find a new way.
Zebing, those young generation, they are willing to spend. There's a strong willingness to spend. That's why they call themselves Moonlight Clan over there. And at the same time, do you think that's because of strong competition, in the market, or because somehow they are more optimistic about their future, more confident about their lives? So, that's fine. Just spend what you earn, and because next month you have a certain new salary, you can depend on that. You can continue like that.
I mean, it's more like what we've been talking about, that this generation of people are actually growing up when the Chinese economy was booming, and it seemed likely to be rather positive, and they, really enjoy the prosperity of this economy. So definitely, I think compared with other generations before them, they enjoy a higher level of security in terms of their rising payment and also better job opportunities future. So that is basically from their own perspective, literally they will see a brighter future, and the market is actually giving them many signals to consume more, because this is a kind of an age of materialism, and people are easily being influenced by social media. It's not only the private social media like the WeChat moment, but also on Xiaohongshu, Red, and other platforms that you always think that other people live a better lifestyle than you do. And then with that kind of imbalances, people want to find that balance and to live the lifestyle they want. And at the meantime, the market is creating more feasible ways of spending money, like the shopping festivals like the Double 11 and even the June 18th. There were 2 annual big shopping festivals going on, and in the meantime, brands are doing promotions on a monthly basis, encourage them to buy. And in the meantime, I think there are a lot of fintech, that you can have the young people to use their credit lines to even not only to spend all their paycheck, but also to spend in advance. And a lot of young people are now in debt. So I think, the market is sending a very strong signal to them that, you need to live in the moment. But in the meantime, we can see that the regulators are actually having a high, much more stronger opinion on that, saying that we shouldn't be encouraging the young people to overly use those fintech technology apps to spend, overly before they can earn that lifestyle on their own. So I definitely think there will be a more balanced consumer markets when a lot of new new brands are actually investing, they need to see that this is the trend that might not be looked at positive and optimistic in the upcoming years.
Well, Zheming, let's take a look at another phenomenon. We mentioned a little bit about the revival of the Chinese culture, sort of. The Chinese brands, has been basically investing and improving their quality, their design of their goods and services. And obviously, that kind of efforts have been paying off. You can see the purchasing of Chinese brands or the preference for Chinese brands is taking off. Tell us about this phenomenon. Is it because the Chinese cultural elements somehow that's attracting these young people?
Their definition of made in China is totally different from made in China concept, for us. That they are seeing that more consumable goods are becoming more quality with better design and that. But we have to be thankful to the international brands. I think the revival of the national brands or the Chinese brands in the consumer markets today is because of the decades of investment and also from the foreign brands where they were leading the market and they've established a very sophisticated supply chain system and they've trained many people in the marketing and branding profession. So basically, I think the revival has a trigger of all those kind of capital that they wanted to invest in these domestic brands. And in the meantime, it's because this whole system is sophisticated enough, not only from the demand supply side, but also from the sales channels when new brands can interact with their customers in a more diversified channels. We've never seen such diversified channels ever. And it seems that people are becoming much more interested in the Chinese style because the Chinese, these national brands are actually know how to, relate to the target consumers, while the international brands, the foreign brands, although Chinese market is important for them, it might be the largest consumer markets for one single international brand, but also it still falls under the umbrella of a global brand. So they have their brand asset, they have their international brand protocol. However, these domestic brands, they don't have that much of legacy, and they can try and efforts, they can find the best way to interact with their target consumer. So we do see that like sports apparel, brands like Li-Ning and Anta, they are using a lot of Chinese cultural and historical elements and artistic elements to revive this kind of a new trend, to put all those kind of elements on their products, and that somehow really being welcomed by the younger generation. And I think, there are so many factors that trigger this trend, and we definitely need to see more such brands will emerge from the market.
On that note, we are coming to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guests. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thank you for watching. See you next time.